guys, welcome back. Today we will be tackling the latest pattern from Lynn's Handmade Design called the Twofer tote. I originally created it to be made with a lightweight leather. However, I've also included instructions to use with cork and vinyl as well. And I would say it's perfect for a confident beginner. So let's jump right in and get started. Before getting started, I like to get all my tape pieces ready to go. I just want to draw your attention to the zipper accent piece. I will be cutting this 1/4 inch double-sided tape in half lengthwise to go along the top of that accent piece. But everything else I will be applying the full 1/4 inch based on the markings on these pieces per pattern instructions. Now I'm going to peel all the tape off the backing and start folding everything in the way it needs to be. Starting with the crossbody strap, I put my double-sided tape down the center line straddling it, and then I'm going to proceed to fold it in to the center line, pressing with my fingers so it secures to the tape well, and then I'll do the same thing with the other side. But I want to make sure that I am pushing it in to butt it in against the other edge so that you could barely see that center line. And I'll do that with the whole length of the strip and then finish with the rest of the tape of the other pieces. Okay, so before we start sewing our straps, I want to bring to your attention the center seam here. That is going to be our guide. I'm going to run my inner foot here right along that center, go around the edge, come back up here. If you don't have a walking foot machine, you may just want to go down one side, lift it up, and down the other side to prevent ripples. When it comes to the strap though, we have the one raw edge here. I'm going to use this side as my guide for my foot. So I'm going to sew it right there, and that'll end up giving me about a 1/4 inch seam from the edge. And then I'll go down one side and up the other. We're not going to backstitch on leather. We're going to leave our tails long so we can pull it to the wrong side, tie off, and singe. Okay, when I tell you about leaving the thread long, you're going to do a gentle tug just to pull these to the back and then tie them off. So you shouldn't have any of the knots or the threads on the front side. So I just tie that off, snip it with scissors, and then I will singe this down. Of course, I do it all at once, but I was just going to show you that. Okay, so we just finished sewing our shoulder straps. So now I just want to trim the ends so they're nice and smooth and even. But as I do that, I do want to make sure that they are perfectly equal in length. So they are. I'm just going to take the same amount off on each end. And then I'm going to take my strap rivet guide included in the pattern and line this shorter gap at the end and place those rivet marks on there, because this is where I'm going to be punching my holes and adding the rivets later on at the end. Alright, so our little side anchors only have the 2 rows of stitching. I added a piece of double-sided tape to the underside. I'm going to thread my 5/8 inch D-ring on, and then go ahead and secure that in place like that. And then I'm going to grab my ruler and mark a 1/2 inch in and mark a line. I'll do that on both pieces so that I know where to line it up in my bag. Okay, keep in mind there are different ways to thread on your hardware and do a strap. This is how I do it. So I'm going to take my strap adjuster. This one is curved, so make sure it's down. Thread it through and down again so it's flush. I have these little 1/2 inch rectangular rings that I will thread on one. Then I will thread on my other lobster clasp. Then we're going to fold it back on itself and go through that strap keeper. Keep going down. and I'm going to thread it up the opposite side, tuck it in, pull on this, pop it through. So then I'm going to sew a row of stitching here, or in my case, add rivets. So I'm just going to hold that in place, and then, like I said, that's a strap loop keeper, so it keeps it from bowing out. When you put it down like that, it keeps it nice and straight. So then the other end, you just loop your swivel clasp on, and again, another row of stitching or rivets. All right, I did transfer the stitching lines. They're kind of hard to see because I'm using disappearing ink, but I put them on where my pockets will be. First, I need to sew a top stitch across the top, and then I will be adding it to my back exterior main piece, lining up the bottom, and then I will be sewing those pockets on here. All right, so pockets are on. I'm gonna punch some holes right here to add rivets. Optional, I like the look, but it does help with the stress when you go in and out on that area. So that's what I'm gonna do right now, and then we're gonna add our bottom leather accent pieces. So I just measured to make sure that this is the actual full length we want, because you're gonna wanna trim off the top if it's not the correct size before stitching this down and moving forward. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the markings we did, and we're gonna put this folded edge to this folded edge of the pocket, lining the edge up with the edge of the fabric and clip in place. So I'm gonna do that with both sides here. And then I'm gonna take this to my machine now, sew a row of stitching 1/8 inch from the edge on both sides, and then also 1/8 inch across this fold on both pieces. All right, so next we're gonna sew this bottom edge here, but I do like to make sure that this is lined up before I clip here. And so far my cutting has been really accurate, so we're good here. But it's important to me that these line up on the sides when I assemble the final part of the bag. So I usually clip those first and then clip the bottom. Just in case my cutting was a little off, I might just adjust my seam because I want this equal. But I'm gonna go ahead and sew a 1/2 inch line here. If it makes it easier to draw that line before you sew, go for it. So once that's sewn, then I'm gonna add a row of double-sided tape this way and finger press the seam open and then top stitch from the right side on top of that. Okay, now we're moving on to the interior. So we're gonna grab one of the lining pieces to put our zipper pocket inside. I wanna draw your attention to the inner piece. It is cut at a different measurement from the outside piece, and it almost looks perfectly square. So if you're not using the pattern pieces, once you cut your piece out, make sure to orient yourself where it's longer going up, shorter going to the side, and cut out your bottom corners right away so you don't get disoriented and end up cutting it like this, because that will affect the bag in the end. And the reason this is shorter than the exterior is because we want it to sit snugly inside. We don't want it bunched up and all droopy in there. So I found my center on one of the lining pieces, and then I'm going to take my zipper accent piece cut out of leather or cork or your vinyl. Take off the tape. This is the 1/8 inch tape. I cut it down the center. And we're going to measure 4 inches down from the center. And then I use this straight edge to line up this edge. And it's going to be, the side is going to be 3 inches from that. So that's what I'll do. I'll drop it 3 inches from the edge, right here, and just line it up against this. And now I got 3 inches here, 3 inches here, 4 inches down, and then I'm just gonna eyeball this so it's nice and smooth, press it down, take it to my machine, and we're gonna sew along the very top outer edge, and do not backstitch. We're gonna pull the threads to the back and tie it off as we have been doing. Next, I'm gonna cut a slit in the center here, just so I can go ahead and flip it over and cut out this stuff inside here. So be very careful not to actually cut your facing, and then proceed to cut all of this out of the center. Next, we're gonna grab our liner pieces right side facing up, zipper tape also facing up, and line up those edges to sew 1/4 inch along the top there. So the back side of the tape is facing the right side of the liner. We're gonna repeat that process with the other side. Right side facing up along the bottom of this, and sew that in place. So when you look at it, your liners are facing each other and the tape is up. All right, so right sides are facing, zippers up. We're gonna have it going this way. The zipper's down by me. This is canvas, what naturally wants to fight me this way, and I can't press it with an iron. And finger pressing doesn't push it much, but quilter's cotton would work. Anything else, you could press it with an iron. So I've just added a quick piece of tape here just to help me along this part, so I can finger press it open, the equivalent of an iron, okay? Then I went ahead and I added the double rows of tape on the top and bottom of this, leaving this oriented down and facing me. And this is our right side. I'm gonna line up this part and lay it centered over our zipper and finger press. Then I'm gonna take it to the machine, and I'm only sewing this bottom row. I'm gonna start here, end here, leave the tails long to pull to the back, and stop. Now you're gonna pull this down and finger press that really well, and then pull that one down on top of it. So here's where I'm gonna have to kind of undo where I had added tape just to help me out initially, but now I really don't need that tape there. But again, with ironing, it will all be where it needs to be. So once I pull that smooth down, clip these sides together, we're gonna flip it over and then sew from the top. Putting our needle right down where we left off here, we're gonna go up, across, and down, and pull the threads to the back. I just took the time to trim off the bottom because this side will be now a 1/2 inch longer. And what you're gonna do is go ahead and press the liner up, this side down and away from each other like that. But this is canvas, I can't press it, so I'm gonna use some tape. But for quilter's cotton, you certainly can, and that would be all you'd need to do. So both sides. So finger press this back 1/2 inch so it sticks. Okay, and then the same thing. Now use that first edge as your guide to line it up like that. And then we're gonna go ahead and clip the sides and take this to our machine. I'm gonna get as close from this side, as close to the zipper as possible. Still a little tape there. But I'm gonna sew right up against this, down, back stitching here, as well as close as I can down here, back stitching and trimming off the excess. This part is optional if you want to add rivets there. It's kind of decorative, but also kind of adds a little stability when you go to turn the bag through this pocket at the end. You got some nice finished edges in here. You don't see any raw zipper tape. We're gonna leave the zipper open because we're gonna turn the bag through that hole. All right, so I just joined the bottom edges of our lining using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and then top stitching, just like we did here. Next, we're gonna go ahead and install our zipper. So if you're using zipper tape, go ahead and take off the pull. If it's an actual zipper, cut off the stop so you can get the pull off, but leave it closed. So with the front of the bag right side face up and the zipper tape face down so that they're facing each other, we are going to base this in place. Then we're going to take our liner and create a zipper sandwich, but you want the right side of the liner piece without the pocket on it going on top, right sides facing. And sew this, flip it around, and top stitch. After pressing it really well to get everything to line flat, I'm gonna use my fingernails to pull this away and just ride the edge of this so it's an eighth inch away from that line. All right, now we need to sew the other side of the zipper. So I'm going to grab from the bottom and create a loop and line up those edges so that right sides are facing here and based in place. Then I'm going to flip our bag around and do the same thing with the lining piece. I'm going to pull the bottom up, creating that zipper sandwich, right sides are facing, and stitch. In order to top stitch now, because the bottom is already connected, we have to pull the zipper apart, top stitch, and then we'll add our pull after that. All right, so I had to pull the zipper apart now so that I can top stitch here. So press that really well, and then again, use the 1/8 inch seam allowance to top stitch. All right, since the lining is a little shorter than the exterior, it kind of bows in a little bit, but then you can see how it sits nice and flush on the inside. There's not going to be any bunching because it's the same as seam allowance. So now I'm going to take both ends and fold it inside. This is the front of my bag, this is the back of my bag, and that is how I'm going to put my pull on from this end so that when it's closed, the zipper pull is to the left. So you thread one side on first, then the other, and then you just pull it together. So I open it up the majority of the way, but give yourself a little wiggle room. And then I want to pull this out so that we could turn our bag wrong sides out, right sides facing. And then we are going to proceed to clip the bag in place. I want to draw your attention to this. Always pinch your zipper towards the lining and clip in place on both sides. So the teeth are going to go towards the lining. And then before I continue to clip, I'll add a piece of double-sided tape here to line those up and then clip everything in place. We're going to take it to the machine and sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance up one side, up the other side, and then we're going to box our corners and sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance on all 4 corners and trim. All right, now we're going to go turn our bag right side out through the open zipper in here. Now with the bag oriented where the zipper is facing you, I am going to measure from the teeth 3 inches up. And then this is my guide for the stitching line, and I'm going to make a marking 3 inches into that line, put a dot there. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Line up my 3 inches with this line and make a dot. So then I'm going to peel off the backing on the shoulder straps that we did earlier. And we are going to go ahead and line the corner at that dot we just put on here. There's our dot again. So there. So the gap between the straps is the gap between this pocket. Now we're going to flip the bag over and do the same thing with the front. But since we don't have a landmark, we're going to do that back strap first. But again, measuring up the 3 inches, I'm going to now use that back strap as my guide to line up this front strap. So put your mark at the 3 inch right there, and again right there. So take your corner, lay it right on top of the back strap, loop it so it's not twisted, and line up the corner once again to that dot you just drew directly on top of the back handle. Last but not least, pull your pocket out. We've already left it folded, so sew that closed, tuck it back in, and your bag is done.